Okay, I'm joined with Jacques Boudreau, the new leader of the Libertarian Party of Canada, one of Canada's most underrated and understated parties around. It's been around for nearly 50 years now, and a strongly principled party. I ran for the Libertarians actually in 2015 out here, and I see you've taken on the task of taking the party forward, Jacques. So thank you and welcome.
Well, thank you. Very happy to be here.
So you took over from Tim Moen just back in mid-August there, so right on the cusp of the election call. How have things been going since?
Well, actually, I should say I was elected on the very day that Trudeau decided to blow another $600 million for nothing. I continue to find the whole thing very frustrating. It's very, very difficult in this day and age to get our message across. I mean, I've gone to debates, and there are elements that to me are screaming to be addressed, and they don't even make one of the questions. It's really bizarre. Like civil liberties, for example, or debt or unfunded liabilities, like all of these, like nobody seems to care. It's very, very bizarre. And of course, if questions aren't asked, right, it's very difficult to bring the topics up, right?
Yeah, well, this is an agonizing time to be somebody who wants to see small government, more individual rights. I mean, it's just not even on the table in this election. All of the major parties just seem to want to outspend each other and are talking about different ways that the government can manage our lives. And there really hasn't been much of a voice speaking on saying, hey, back off. But it's
yeah. And as I said, you go to debate, if those topics don't come up, it's very difficult to bring them up.
So you're definitely, giving it an effort. You've got a number of candidates in a number of locations in Canada. I'll start with that at libertarian.ca. People can see if they have somebody to choose from in their constituency or they're riding there. How has it been going? I mean, I know they've been trying, but it's a difficult nut to crack.
What I hope on Monday, I mean, we'll see if some of our message has gotten through. Well, let me back up for a little bit, just telling you, like in many ways, I thought that this election was, and I hate to make hay out of COVID, but I thought that this was a very much of a silver lining because, for example, that I was told at one point that a poll in Ontario had shown that about 30% of the population wanted nothing to do with lockdowns. And if you look at the traditional parties in Ontario, the Conservatives, the Liberals, the NDP, the Green, I mean, they're all, trying to outdo each other in terms of lockdowns, if you wish. And I thought, this is astonishing to me that 30% of the population has no voice. So I thought, because we'll go to the polls next year, and I'm actually the interim leader of the OLP as well right now. But I thought, we are really got to make this our number one, item on our platform is that, under a similar circumstances, a libertarian government in Ontario would have no lockdowns. And at least to give a voice to, well, first of all, I believe that, but number two, to give a voice to 30% of the population. But now, I'm looking at the polls at the national level, and I'm not, like, I'm starting to doubt now that 30% of the population doesn't want any lockdowns because, there are only two parties advocating. Well, I know there are sort of other sort of minor parties out west, and maybe they carry the same message like Maverick and things like that. But like between the PPC and us, I don't think we're going to get anywhere near 30%. So this silver lining that I thought we had, I'm not quite sure that we do anymore. So it's going to be tough.
If a circumstance like this doesn't get people to stand up for their ability to free movement and other individual freedoms, it does make one wonder if and when it's ever going to happen.
Right. So I'm hoping to be surprised. I'm not a big fan of the PPC, but I mean, they're certainly better than the rest. And if we don't do well, I certainly do hope that they'll do better. But it'll be interesting to see between them and us what percentage we get. I mean, maybe I'll be surprised. Maybe there's this pent-up demand that doesn't show up in polls, and yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I got a feeling it's a little bit of things still have to get a little bit worse before they're going to get better. It's just like screaming into the wind with people that don't even, just to go on the fiscal end of it, don't understand that that using the central bank to shore up, lockdowns and things on the long run is going to kick us all in the ass really hard. But I think people insist on waiting until they get that kick in the ass before they pay attention to it.
Well, on that note, and this is something that I just added to our platform, the number one weakness in our electoral / political system is the complete lack of skin in the game on the part of politicians. Because to your point, it is easy to even get elected by making promises of free stuff to a whole bunch of people and kicking the can down the road. But, in the private sector, I mean, I'm an actuary by trade, right? So in the life insurance business, part of my job was to make sure that the company always had enough money set aside to pay future claims. I mean, that's the way it ought to be done. But, politicians can make promises, they can run up a huge amount of debt, and some poor guy 20, 30 years down the road might be stuck having to pay for this. But the person who created the mess will be living off, a gold-plated pension without any penalty. And that has to stop. We in our platform, we're talking about, making sure that we remove all kinds of protection that politicians have given themselves over the years so that they could be sued and possibly, put in jail. I mean, you got these grandiose plans and all that, and they end up exploding in everybody's face, pay the price. But right now, it's not the case. So to your point, again, the debt, nobody cares because it's somebody else who's going to be stuck with it.
Yeah, well, and it's something I talked about before. It's, the main people who supported lockdowns and shutdowns were usually people who had a guaranteed income one way or another, often in the public service. I mean, small business owners who are getting crushed, or employees of those small businesses, or even big businesses, but they're getting shut out of work. They're paying the penalty for this, and their voices are quite limited quite often.
Well, what's going on right now, and it's always the case, right? I mean, first of all, we got inflation ramping up, and I think it's going to be a while before it gets better, and it's probably going to get worse. And it's the poor people who pay when inflation ramps up. And to your point, the lockdowns have primarily hurt poor people, and it's always the case. The traditional parties always claim that they're there for the little guy. That's not true at all. Most of their policies actually end up hurting these people.
Yeah, well, and something that did happen this time around, and I guess it's a mixed blessing, would be a bit frustrating, but I mean, the PPC kind of stole the potential libertarian thunder this time around. I mean, one party did at least have to stand for and against the lockdowns, against the mandatory vaccinations, things such as that. And Bernier sort of cornered that market, whereas perhaps the Libertarian Party could have or would have been the one in that role. I mean, the more the merrier, as far as I'm concerned. So get some voices speaking up like this. But is there a hard cap on that support? Like, is that after this election going to be all that can be gained for those people? As you said, we're hoping it's 30%. It looks like it might be more like 8 to 10.
Yeah, I mean, I came to be a libertarian through education. So this is what I believe in terms of educating people. I've said this before. In fact, I said this at Edmonton when I was elected. If you'd asked me 15 years ago what I thought was going to happen in terms of getting the message out, at that time, I thought it was a genuine race between educating people and getting them to realize that the traditional way of doing things is bound for failure, and libertarianism being a lot better. So that's one of the contestant. The other one is a crisis. Now, I no longer believe it's a race. There's no doubt in my mind that we're going to have a crisis before we get to convert people. But what I've said is I want to be on record, through, podcasts or videos or articles, or, I want to be on record warning people that this was coming, such that when it, what hits the fan, that people will be able to look back and say, yeah, well, the Conservatives, the Liberals, the NDP, the Green, I mean, they completely ignored this oncoming crisis, but the Libertarians had it right. So if we're going to do a reset, and I'm not talking, the swab type reset, but a real one, let's put these guys in charge, because at least they saw it coming.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it'd be a cold comfort to be able to say, I told you so later, but at least it's there. Okay, they saw it coming, then they must have or theoretically should have a better plan to get out of this mess and fix it.
Right, but it's a question of credibility, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you told people this is coming and it happens, it certainly gives you a lot more credibility than someone who got caught with their pants down.
Yeah, well, and you're holding the fort, and it's a tough task. I mean, I know from watching online that there's no more difficult or worse group to try and hold together than a bunch of libertarians, because we're all individualists who get crabby, and if we're not fighting the state, we're fighting each other. So post-election, you've still got your work cut out for you. I like the way you're talking. You're looking at the long game. You're still going to be there, and you're going to be saying, this is, these are the solutions. They haven't changed. So what sort of plans, skipping ahead after Monday, do you have for the party?
Well, the first thing that we need to address, and what I'm about to say is in no way, a criticism of anybody who came before, because and a couple of people, frankly, have told me, Jacques, don't sweat this election. It was a snap election, and we're not really prepared. I mean, I believe we only have 13 people running, right? And I was looking it up. The communists have got more people. I think they got 37 candidates or something, right? To my mind, that won't do. Because, in my experience, libertarians are among the best read people. Like I've rarely met a libertarian who doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. Most of them, have read all the good stuff, the Rothbard and the Mises, and they can defend their position very well. Most of them write very well. So it's nice to have a presence, articles, blogs, whatever it is. But if we don't give people an opportunity to vote for us come election time, I don't see much good coming out. So my number one priority will be to make sure that 4 years from now, although, I say this, it looks like we're going to have another minority government. And who knows? I mean, if Trudeau's in charge, he may just call another one in 18 months if he thinks he's going to get a majority. But anyway, I would love to get 100 plus candidates. I mean, ideally, I'd like to have 338. But so I'm going to work at making sure that we can identify people who can run, who we do the party proud, and to get way more. Because again, it's nice to have a message, but if people don't get an opportunity to vote for you, then you kind of miss the point.
Yeah, well, it's cliche, but the saying is the campaign for the next election begins the day after the last election. Like you've got to start getting that ground organization going. Again, just kind of turning back to the PPC, I was kind of surprised and impressed in a sense, though, that they really actually had been working on getting all those constituencies going between the elections to a degree. I mean, you can't get that many running overnight. That's the issue you had. It was you become the leader the day the election begins. You can only get so many in, but you have a presence. I like the plan. You've got to be there. That's the thing. You're holding the fort until people wake up.
I mean, one big advantage that the PPC has is that Bernier, I think because of his past connection in the Conservative Party, can raise a lot of money. And, I was describing to someone the other day, a young person, who reached out to me and said, and this is a highly unusual Canadian, all the more reason because he's only 22 years old, but he had read the platform of all the parties, including ours. And, he said, wow, you guys really approach things differently. Yeah, we do better, I would add. But he said, I had to find out that you exist through the Election Canada website. And how could that be? I mean, how come you guys are not more out there? And one of my answers to him was, because I think I had 3 different points, but one of them is, I said, no, we are very much in a sort of chicken and egg situation where we're small right now, so we don't get a lot of donation. Without donation, it's difficult to be, say, to advertise. Like, I don't even have signs for this election, right? So people are going to find out I'm running. I mean, maybe via some of these, podcasts and things that I do, or my presence on Twitter or whatever. But there are people who are going to find out when they come and, when they go vote, which is, not really ideal. But, I said, if we could get some kind of critical mass where we get enough money and more people to advertise the party, and then more people through that get to know us, and then they join, I mean, then you get into a virtuous cycle as opposed to a vicious one. So again, that's something else I'm going to try to do and hope that we get some traction. Again, maybe on Monday we'll be surprised and more people are going to say, you know what, I didn't know these guys existed, but their platform is way more aligned with what I believe than, the traditional parties, particularly since, quite frankly, I think that we are unfortunately gravitating towards a one-party state, because when someone takes a close look at the platform of the Conservatives, Liberal, NDP, boy, they only differ from each other at the margins. There might be 5-7% difference, but the bulk is all the same. So that's dangerous, because there are, I'm reading, I don't know if it's true, but that there are a lot of sort of what you would call traditional conservatives who are not happy at all with the Conservative Party right now, because it's a pale shadow of what it used to be, right? Because they moved so far to the center, possibly even slightly left of center. I was reading an excellent writer the other day who was talking about the choice for people right now was the NDP platform in 3 different colors. I mean, that's just not right. You can't just assume that there's only one way to go forward.
Yeah, well, the problem seems to be that, I'll take a shot directly at the Conservatives. They seem more inclined to abandon principle when they seem pressure rather than defending principle. And so they just keep sliding and sliding and sliding. And yes, they're becoming indistinguishable from any of the others. It's just one soup of the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're holding the torch there, though. And I mean, again, it's a party that's been there for almost 50 years. There's a base. There's always will be. I mean, the Libertarians, who are stubborn that way anyways. And I really hope and look forward to seeing you build upon that, because there is going to be a need. It's like we were talking about. The crisis is coming. We can't borrow forever. And we've got to have somewhere for people to go, because if there isn't somewhere for them to go, it's not going to get any better at that point.
The good news is we had a guest speaker at the convention in Edmonton who he himself is not a pollster, but I think he's got a website now where, through analyzing polls that are made public, plus I believe he's got some way to measure, activity on media like Facebook and things like that. He puts it all together and makes some prognostication. But his viewpoint was that, to your point, is that with a 50-year history, he said, you guys are not going to do well this election. But he said, in the long term, it bodes a lot better when you do have a tradition. So, he would certainly agree with you. Whereas he thinks that even the PPC, it's kind of a one-man show. And if and when Bernier quits, he thinks it's just going to wither and die. Same thing with, because he said, you guys have existed for 50 years, and he could point to a lot of parties that have come and gone during that time, right? So I hope you're right. I hope that we'll be around for the next 50 years.
Well, we'll see. I appreciate you coming on to talk to me, and I'll certainly spread this out there, let people know, and remind them, hey, there's another alternative out there. They may have a candidate in their constituency, and to let them know if they don't have one this time, maybe it's time to consider putting their foot forward to either organize or run themselves for the next one, because it won't be that long.
Right. Well, and you may hear from me in the future. Maybe we can get you to run again.
No, I don't belong in elected office. I'm much better chattering. I appreciate that.
Okay.
But no, I'll keep fighting the good fight, Jacques, and thank you very much for coming on with me today. I look forward to seeing how it goes Monday.
All right. Well, thank you for the invitation. It was great. Thanks.